The last 10 months have presented unprecedented challenges for the Bears, the National Football League, and our nation. Our hearts go out to the families and friends of the more than 380,000 people who have died of the coronavirus, and we wish a speedy and full recovery to those afflicted with COVID-19. We salute all of the healthcare professionals, police and firefighters, EMTs, grocery store cashiers, delivery workers, teachers, and others who have been putting themselves at risk to ensure the safety of the rest of us and provide us with some semblance of a normal life. They epitomize the best of America, and we are indebted to them. Last spring and summer, when a full NFL season was far from a certainty, many Bears fans told me, "We've got to have football to get us through this." It's a tribute to Commissioner Goodell and the league's medical director, Dr. Alan Sills, and their staffs, and to all NFL players that the entire regular season schedule and now one round of the playoffs have been played. To all the Bears fans, season ticket holders, and suite holders who were not allowed to attend games at Soldier Field this year, you were sorely missed. I saw a sports business publication include the Bears on a list of what it called teams without fans in 2020. That just wasn't the case. We had and have many fans. We agree with and support the City of Chicago and Mayor Lightfoot's decision to not allow spectators at Soldier Field this past season. We look forward to the day when Bears fans can once again safely attend games and provide us with a home field advantage. I commend and thank all of the Bears players, coaches, and staff who dealt with daily testing, physical distancing, mask wearing, and proximity tracing at Hallis Hall, and the rigorous personal discipline away from the facility required to play every regular season game on our schedule. I'm proud of them, and we are grateful to their families for all the sacrifices they have made in the midst of anxiety and uncertainty. One member of the Bears family deserves special mention. Andre Tucker, our head athletic trainer, also served as our infection control officer. In that role, besides all of the responsibilities of his regular position, he guided us through the various and ever-changing pandemic protocols, coordinated communication with the league office, talked us off the ledge when we had a false positive scare, carried out the plan when we had positives and close contacts, and patiently answered the many questions and addressed the many concerns of Bears players, coaches, staff, and their families. He was up all night on many nights, and he did it all with an unflappable nature that helped calm fears. The leadership that Ted Phillips has displayed during the pandemic has been extraordinary. It is yet another example of why our family has so much faith in him as the Bears president and CEO. He communicated frequently and extensively with our staff and made sure that they know that their health and safety is our top priority. He streamlined work at home requirements and allayed the fears of staff that there would be layoffs or furloughs. I'm particularly grateful for Ted's steady hand when the team faced adversity during this past season, and as he and I went through the end of season evaluation process. We had vigorous discussions over the course of several weeks. Those conversations, as well as regular meetings with Ryan and Matt, including this week, have been candid and constructive and have culminated in the decisions we're sharing with you today. Ryan and Matt are men of character. They are both, like Ted, outstanding leaders. I've been most impressed with how well they collaborate. I was impressed with both of them this past season, especially during the 6-game losing streak. The fact that our players never gave up is a tribute to the players. It is also indicative of the type of players that Ryan acquires and to the players' regard for Matt as their head coach. Like Ted and I, Ryan and Matt too have vigorous discussions. In the end, all four of us want what's best for the Bears. There are no egos. There are no other agendas. Have mistakes been made? Yes. But I think both Ryan and Matt are learning and growing in their roles. Before turning it over to Ted, I want to take a moment to tell Bears fans, we understand your frustration. We're frustrated too. And it would be a perfectly natural reaction to say, back up the truck, major overhaul, whatever you want to call it. After one particularly dispiriting loss this season, a season ticket holder sent me an email that read, fire somebody, we deserve better. I get it. You deserve your Bears being winners. The decisions we're announcing today may not be the easiest or most popular, but we believe they're the best decisions for the Bears. Ted?
Thank you, George. Hello, everyone. Good morning. Let me start by saying that 2020 was a unique season that tested every aspect of our team. On the field, we started 5-1. We lost 6 in a row. We won 3 of the last 4, and we made it into the playoffs. The pandemic challenged us, and I'm proud of how we faced adversity, adapted, and moved forward. Both Ryan and Matt were instrumental in holding the team together. We're not happy, and we're far from satisfied. Making the playoffs is a step in the right direction, but it's not enough. We need to win in the playoffs, and we need to compete for and win a championship. We know we need to get better. We believe that Ryan and Matt are excellent leaders. They have each had successes and failures, but the path to winning is rarely linear, and we feel that the strong ability of Ryan and Matt to work together to build a shared vision of success is the fastest way towards building a consistently winning organization. The popular opinion is to make a change because we've hit adversity. I get it, but holding people accountable is much more than just starting over. Other teams looking for new football leadership, they point to the ability to overcome adversity, the need to adapt to challenges, the need to have a collaborative working environment between the head coach and the general manager. We have that strong foundation in place. Not all the decisions may be the right ones, but when you can collaborate and trust each other, and you have the ability to challenge each other and come out united, you stand a better chance to make more right decisions than wrong ones. Those are the strong leadership skills that both Ryan and Matt possess. There's plenty of improvement that needs to be made, but Ryan and Matt have the ability, and it's not easy, to self-reflect, to understand where we've fallen short and where we can make improvements. To me, that is being accountable. We trust Ryan and Matt to use their experiences together, the good ones, the bad ones, learn from them, and to bring a consistently winning team back to Chicago. We're all fixated. Everyone in this building is fixated on being a championship organization and to field a team that our fans can be proud of. Everyone has an opinion on how to get there, and that's okay. We know that we all ultimately want the same thing, a winner. And we have exactly the right football culture, that all teams strive for. So we're going to recognize our failures. We're going to build on our successes. And we trust Ryan and Matt to be solution oriented and to continue to work through all those challenges together and get us on the right path towards being a winning Chicago Bears team. With that, George and I are happy to answer any questions you might have.
We're going to open it up for questions for George and Ted only media. Just a reminder, if you have questions for Matt and Ryan, we'll get to that after they give their opening statements. First up, we're going to go to Pat Finley.
Good morning, George. How are you?
Good morning, Pat. Doing well. You?
I'm fine. When we talked a week before the season started this year, you said you wanted to see whether this year's team was closer to the 12-4 team or to the 8-8 team. As you sit here today, can you say that this year's team was closer to the 12-4 team? And if it wasn't, what led you to keep things the way they were?
I can't say that. The records from 2019 and 2020 are identical. So the sad fact is we are closer to the 2019 team than the 2018 team. So what we have to do in our postseason evaluation is identify what areas of strength we have and what areas of weakness we have, and work on the weaknesses to make the Bears better.
JJ Stankovitz.
Hey, George, thanks for taking the time with us today. When you did these evaluations, did you look at the whole scope, scope of the franchise over the last 2 decades with only 6 playoff appearances, no playoff wins in the last decade, and how did that impact your discussions?
I don't know that we went back 2 decades. My approach to an evaluation process is to take an individual's body of work and say, based on that body of work, not on any one decision, any one game, or any one season, really, and say, does that merit continuing with that person? And in the case of both Ryan and Matt, we decided that the answer to that question was yes.
Dan Wiederer.
George, what specifically did you see within this season that gives you indications that you're making meaningful progress toward winning a championship?
Well, we added some more talented players this year. Darnell Mooney is a good example, a lower round draft pick that Ryan and Matt found that blossomed this year and became a key part of our offense. We need to keep doing more of that. The larger question was how well the team stuck together during adversity. Usually when you go through a losing streak like that, people start pointing fingers, people start casting blame. That just didn't happen with our team. And like I said, that's a credit to both the players and to Ryan and Matt for accomplishing that.
George, just to follow up on that, you said the same things a year ago, that the after an 8-8 season, everyone stuck together and everyone was solution oriented. You wound up back in the same 8-8 state and going through the same adversity. What leads you to believe that the adversity eventually is not going to have to be dealt with?
Well, that's a good question. We need to see improvement. We're not satisfied with where we are now, but we think that both Ryan and Matt are the people best able to lead us to success.
Adam Johns.
Hey, George, kind of going off everything you said about the belief you guys have in Ryan and whatnot, has he been extended? Did he receive a contract extension? And then kind of going off that, like, what bar are you setting for improvement in 2021? Is this just a win-loss evaluation now solely?
Neither Ryan nor Matt received a contract extension. As far as what we need to see progress. It's not a certain number of wins. We don't know what's going to happen in the 2021 season. We just had an unprecedented event during the 2020 season. So we don't know what injuries are going to occur, what other challenges are going to arise, but we've got to see progress.
Adam Hogue.
Ted, you just said that you feel like you guys have the exact right football culture that all teams strive for. I understand that you guys feel like you have a lot of good people in the organization helping create that culture, but I think a lot of people would respond to that and say it's not necessarily a winning culture yet. So can you just explain why you feel like you have the culture that all football teams strive for?
Because that's when you sit back and you look at what makes a successful organization besides wins and losses, it's the people that you have. It's whether or not they can put their egos down. It's whether or not they can look at situations, self-reflect, admit to their mistakes, and try to find learnings from not just their mistakes, but their successes that they've had and build off of those. Has it happened as fast as we'd like it to? No, it hasn't. That's why we're sitting here now saying we do trust Ryan and Matt, but we need to see improvement. We need to see improvement. I do believe that when you, as we've read many times over the last few weeks, there's a desire to fire everyone. When you don't win enough games, fire everyone. That is not a recipe for success, in our opinion. When you believe in the people that you have who can learn from their mistakes. If there was finger pointing, we would understand that. That is not a recipe for success. That's not a good culture. We don't have that. Many teams, when you lose 6 games in a row, will fall and they will finger point, as George pointed out, and they won't recover from that. We did. We did. Did we do well in the playoffs? No, we haven't won any playoff games in Ryan and Matt's tenure. That's not good enough. But we do think the foundation is in place, and they're both solution oriented, and we're expecting improvement this year.
Brad Biggs.
Morning, George. I'm curious, what questions did you ask Ryan and Matt specifically about the quarterback position, and what did they offer you that provided you with confidence in regards to that position?
Well, we did discuss the quarterback position at length. I'm not going to go into the specifics because their end of season evaluation of the roster hasn't been completed. But it's pretty clear we need better production from the quarterback position in order to be successful.
Are you confident they can deliver that for you in 21?
Yes, we are.
Hub Arkush.
Morning, George.
Morning, Hub.
I'm curious about your process as the top manager in the organization. I know you've talked about meetings with Ted and Ryan and Pace, and you've said we in all of this conversation. As the final word, as the guy in charge, do you have regular conversation with fellow owners / family members? Do you have advisors, or are you the final word on the performances of Ted and Ryan and Matt? I mean, I know you're the final word, but do you arrive at that on your own, or are you getting other input?
No, I confer with other owners around the league whose opinions I trust, and I confer with members of our family and members of the board of the directors before making a decision like this.
Kevin Fishbane.
Hi, George. You mentioned having the faith in Ryan and Matt when it comes to the quarterback position. Why do you have the confidence in them to kind of, especially for Ryan, to take another swing at this position?
I think it's the way they collaborate. Matt's been involved in player personnel decisions since he's arrived here. Of course, Ryan has final say on the selection and roster decisions, but it's how well they work together. Like I said, they have vigorous discussions, and we think that their collaboration will result in the right decisions for the Bears.
Mark Potash.
Hey, George, even with this year's playoff appearance, the Bears have been in the playoffs 7 times in 28 years since the end of the Ditka era. And to a lot of fans, that reflects on you. So how much merit is there to the idea that the Bears need people more rooted in football to make these football decisions than you and Ted?
Well, Ryan and Matt are our football guys. I've heard it often that Ted meddles in football affairs, and that notion is just absurd. It just doesn't happen. He's the president and CEO. Ryan reports to Ted. But the idea that Ted or I meddle in football decisions just isn't true.
No, that's not my question. It's not about meddling in the actual football, like on the field. I think the criticism is that you are judging the coach and general manager, and I think people feel that the Bears need people more rooted in football to make that decision.
Oh, I beg your pardon.
Yeah.
That's a valid criticism. My performance is evaluated by ownership and the board, and that's how that process works.
Colleen Kane.
Hi, George. As you met with Ryan and Matt over the last couple of days, what were you hoping to learn about their plans for the future, and what was most convincing to you about those plans?
I'm sorry, Colleen, you broke up there. Could you repeat the question?
Sorry about that. As you met with Ryan and Matt over the last couple of days, what were you hoping to learn about their plans for this next year going forward, and what was most convincing to you about those plans?
Okay, you were breaking up again, but I think your question was when we met with Ryan and Matt, what was most convincing about their plans?
Yes.
For getting us back to winning ways?
Yes.
Part of it was their thoroughness. Part of it was how well they communicate. Part of it was their candor in assessing their own performance and Ryan's performance Ryan's evaluation of Matt as the head coach, since the head coach reports to the general manager in our structure. It just gave us confidence that retaining the continuity and sticking with these guys is the best route for the Bears at this time.
Thank you.
Dion Miller.
George, in evaluating what went on this season and where the team is at right now, how much did the pandemic and the unnatural flow of the season impact the decisions that you made moving forward?
I don't know about percentages, but the pandemic and our response to it was a big part of it. You want people who can handle adversity. You want people who are adaptable, and both Ryan and Matt displayed those qualities. And the pandemic affected different teams in different ways. But I thought the way we handled it, our response to it, our communication, our flexibility, our adaptability, were really reflections of the leadership of Matt and Ryan. And please say hello to that Bears fan in the background there.
Will do.
Jason Leisure.
George, two questions for you about accountability. When you praise the team for coming through that losing streak, is there accountability for coaching and building a team that has a 6-game losing streak in the first place? And when you refer to Ryan Pace as growing into this job, 6 years in, should that be the case?
I'm sorry, Jason, you were breaking up there too. I don't know if that's your connection or my connection. Could you repeat you got two questions?
Yeah, about accountability. When you praise the team for how they came through the 6-game losing streak, is there accountability for coaching and assembling a team that has a 6-game losing streak in the first place? And secondly, when you say of Ryan Pace that he's growing into this job, should that be the case 6 years in?
Well, in answer to the first question, absolutely. 6-game winning streaks are frequently season killers. I think we were only the third team in what they call the modern era to lose 6 games in a row and still make the playoffs. And that was at the lowest seed in our conference when that playoff position had just been added. As far as I'm concerned, 2020 was a losing season. And a big part of that was a 6-game losing streak. So we've got to identify why that happened and what needs to be done to fix it. As far as whether 6 years is the right amount of time for a general manager to grow into his position, I think depends on the situation. I don't think there's any magic number. Like I said, we take the approach that the person's entire body of work is considered to decide whether the employment relationship should continue.
Mike Berman.
Good morning, and thank you for your time. George, this is for you. At what point will the factors that determine whether or not Ryan and Matt are back, for example, after next season, move from more general to specific, some benchmarks? And what might those benchmarks be to ensure that that you're seeing the right kind of progress to bring them back?
Well, Ted used the word improvement. I use the word progress. I think they're similar, and I think all four of us will know whether there's been sufficient improvement or sufficient progress to continue past 2021.
Andy?
Yeah, hi, George. I was just wondering on whether you could elaborate more on just what exactly you're seeing that tells you that Ryan and Matt are the right people for the job, the people outside the organization who might think you're spinning your wheels aren't seeing.
Well, as I said, the leadership, the collaboration, the adaptability, the ability to handle adversity. Listen, we all want things to get better. And a lot of times you have to go through tough times before they get better. And the way they handled success in 2018 and the way they've handled adversity the last two seasons lead us to the conclusion that they're the best people to lead us in 2021.
Cam Ellis.
George, you guys are 12, 14 games under 500 in Ryan Pace's era. Why do you feel the Bears still deserve the emotional and, financial investment that Bears fans give this team year in and year out?
Well, we think that's something that's needs to be worked for and earned on a daily basis. Like I said, it was very strange to not have spectators at Soldier Field this past season. And we understand that that support is earned, and we need to do everything we can to earn that support. And we also understand that, as both Ted and I referenced in our opening remarks, that it's quick to say, well, what is needed here is a major overhaul. And sometimes that's the right answer, and other times it isn't. And we think the right answer at this time is continuity.
Jeff Dickerson.
George, to follow up on that point, clearly everyone across the league lost money this year. That was completely out of everyone's control. Did losing revenue and not having the same type of income coming in this year play any role in your decision to keep everyone together as opposed to having to make changes and paying out people that still have existing contracts?
No, it had no impact whatsoever.
We're back to Pat Finley.
George, when did you know that this was what you wanted to do? And if it was yesterday, what role did those meetings play in your decision?
Well, as I said, Ted and I talk on a regular basis, and we talk with Ryan and Matt on a regular basis. So I can't point to any one particular moment. It was just the accumulation of all of those discussions. And I thought that our conversations with Ryan and Matt were very helpful in getting us to this point.
Could it
Dan Wiederer.
This for George and Ted. 4 years ago, Ryan took the biggest swing at fixing the quarterback position that this organization has taken in a decade, perhaps longer, and it obviously didn't connect. When you reflect back on the pre-draft process of 2017 and the hunt for a franchise quarterback, what have you identified as the missteps in that process that have to be avoided going forward in this next pursuit of a franchise quarterback?
I think the thing that we're very much looking forward to and feel very positive about is, again, the collaboration between Ryan and Matt. I think that'll be immensely helpful going into this upcoming draft.
Chris Emma.
George, you head into this offseason with little cap space. You have the 20th overall pick, low in that order, and now you come back with the same coach and GM. What inspires confidence that this will actually improve? What makes you believe that it's going to be different?
I don't know, frankly, that a lot of people have confidence in this course of action, but sometimes you have to take the route that you think is best, even if when it's not the most popular decision. And we're aware of that. And we're prepared for that.
Adam Johns.
Hey, George. To go back to the quarterback conversation, obviously when one is taken, it changes the short-term and long-term evaluations of a team. If one is taken, is the organization prepared for this being more than a 1-year process with Ryan and Matt? Are you looking at this as possibly being a multi-year evaluation with these guys?
I'm not sure I understand your question. We have an evaluation process that is conducted at the conclusion of every season. And like I said, you take the individual's body of work and make a determination as best you can based on that body of work, whether the relationship should continue.
Mark Grody.
Hi, George. Your support of Pace and Nagy is obvious. I know you said that they don't have contract extensions, but are you considering, based on your support of them, are you considering contract extensions for either or both of Ryan Pace and Matt Nagy at this point?
That's an ongoing process. That'll be mostly in Ted's hands, but we haven't really gotten to that yet.
JJ?
Yeah, I can add that the contracts haven't been part of our discussions. It's not a concern with anyone. And when we show improvements, contracts will take care of themselves.
Thank you.
JJ?
George, I want to follow up on Dan's question about the quarterback. When Ryan has made 3 big swings at quarterback, whether it's been Mitch, Mike Glennon, Nick Foles, when you evaluated those decisions, what led you to believe that he can hit a home run on that 4th swing?
I think it's not just that decision or those decisions. Like I said, it's the entire body of work. Those are significant decisions, of course. And that's part of the evaluation process. But we just feel confident going into the off season that Matt and Ryan can do what's necessary to get the players we need to be successful.
Kevin Fishbane.
Hey, Ted, you mentioned there's more to holding people accountable than moving on and firing people. What are some of the specific ways that you believe you guys are holding accountability, not just for Ryan and Matt, but for yourselves as well?
Well, I think accountability is about taking responsibility for the decisions you make, good ones, bad ones, learning from them. When we look at Matt and Ryan, and it's fair question. Whoever asked the question about Ryan has been 6 years. Isn't that enough time? I understand that question. The reality is, if you break his tenure from 15 to 17 and then 18 to 20, there have been vast improvements in 18 to 20. And a lot of that has to do with the trust level that's been built between Matt and Ryan, how they make decisions. You can ask Ryan and Matt. You can ask Ryan yourself if he has had learnings from his first 3 years to his last 3. I think you'll hear that he has. That's what we heard. I'm not going to get into the specifics, but when we've looked at that and we've looked at how the drafts have improved in the last 3 years versus the prior 3 years, we see lots of reason for hope. We have a young foundation that we can build on. You've all brought up the quarterback situation. Totally get it. There's obviously a lot to sift through there, and that will be done. And frankly, we're excited about, and so are Matt and Ryan, about the ability for the two of them to look at that position together, whether it's free agency, the draft, what current quarterbacks we have, and to make the right decisions. They're fired up about it. So are we, and we have great trust in their ability to figure that out.
Well, and Ted,
Go ahead, Kevin.
sorry, just to follow up on that, you mentioned taking responsibility for the missteps. How do you decide where to draw the line in terms of whether or not there have been too many missteps along the way, and to the point where that responsibility does not, get overvalued?
Well, you know what? That's a decision that there's lots of different layers to any decision to keep a person, not keep a person. So we'll look at all the different layers and peel them all back. And as I think George mentioned, we're gonna know whether we're heading in the right direction or not. And that's how we feel about it. This is a people business. And when we step back and we've taken a look at what are the qualities of a successful manager, general manager, and a head coach, we feel that Ryan and Matt check off lots of those boxes. Have we gotten the quarterback situation completely right? No. Have we won enough games? No. Everything else is there. And so whenever you make a decision, in my opinion, there's lots of ripple effects throughout other parts of the building too, and other people's careers. And we have a solid football foundation. We have a solid football culture. We truly believe that, because we've delved into all the different issues that make up a solid football culture, and we feel confident that will lead us and lead Matt and Ryan to make the right decisions and correct some of the mistakes in the past.
We're going to do a couple more here. Mark Potash.
Just for Ted, real quick, can you clarify contractually where Ryan and Matt are, when their contracts end? But also for George, without fans in the stands and without no shows to show dissatisfaction, how much do you feel you have a grasp of just how dissatisfied Bears fans are? Because a lot of times they make their statement by not showing up, and they didn't get that opportunity this year.
Well, so the contracts. The contracts really aren't part of this discussion. Ryan and Matt both know that when improvement's shown, they'll take care of themselves. So I'd like to leave that just as that with that comment.
But you can't say when they're signed through.
And in terms of
when do their current
it's not really pertinent to what we're talking about here today, in my opinion. In terms of the fans, yeah, we get it. They're angry. We don't need to, we wish they were at Soldier Field, but we don't need to count the number of no-shows to know how our fans feel. We're constantly reaching out to our fans, our season ticket holders, our suite holders, our partners. I think we have a really good pulse on how they feel. And they want to see a winner, just like we do. We get that.
Adam Hogue.
If I could just answer Mark's question, because I think the part about the fans was directed mostly to me. Yeah, we missed the fans at Soldier Field, and so they didn't have the opportunity to demonstrate their displeasure by not showing up. And I know that after some of our games, the pundits were saying that the Bears should be glad that spectators weren't allowed at Soldier Field that day. I didn't have the opportunity because we didn't have spectators to go around the parking lots and chat up Bears fans. But I try to keep in touch as best I can in the midst of the pandemic. And for the last several weeks, I've been faithfully responding to my hate mail.
This will be the last one for George and Ted. Adam Hogue.
Yeah, George, earlier, I think it was Hub who asked you who you consult on these big organizational decisions. And you mentioned other NFL owners that you trust. What do you hear from them? What do they tell you? What do you learn from them?
Well, there are a number of people that I trust and respect in the league. Just a few of them, certainly not an inclusive list, are John Mara, Art Rooney, and Michael Bidwell. They've been through these types of situations. And it's an unusual dynamic in the NFL, I think. I think people are reluctant to tell other people how they should run their business. But those three in particular have been very helpful whenever I've had a question or a concern, or ask them for advice or to share their experiences. And I've found their feedback to be very helpful.
Quick opening statement for me, then I'll pass it on to Matt. You know, as I look back on the 2020 season and really just 3 days off a playoff loss, you know, I have a lot of mixed emotions. I think on one hand, I'm proud of our building, our players and our staff. You know, really in a year where the ability to adjust to circumstances was critical. You know, I go all the way back to the draft, through the off season, through camp, and then the season. You know, I'm proud of how we handled that as an entire team. You know, I appreciate, I respect the work that every single person did, that every single person put into this during these unprecedented times. Is 8-8 good enough? No. Is losing in the first round of the playoffs good enough? No. But what I appreciate is that we fought, we stuck together, and we start off 5-1. We go through those tough 6 games. We win 3 out of our final 4 regular season games. And I do think that speaks to the culture that we have. And I think it speaks to our players and their grit. And I'm proud of that. But with that said, we all have high expectations. And 2020 wasn't good enough. And I get that and I understand that. And ownership has given us an opportunity. They've given us all the resources we can ask for. And now that's on Matt and I to prove them right. So with that, I'll pass it over to Matt, and then I'll be happy to take any questions.
Yeah, hi guys. Good afternoon. And I'd like to just kind of reflect as well with Ryan, and I agree with a lot of that. I think, you know, we've talked a lot throughout the season and from game to game. And when you look big picture at what we've done, ultimately as a head coach, the first thing you do is you reflect and you say, okay, could we be better as a team, and did we achieve the ultimate goal, which is winning the Super Bowl? And obviously the question, the answer to that is no, we didn't. So then you go back and you say, okay, why didn't we, and what can we do? And you reflect and you see, okay, we started out 5-1, and in that 5-1 stretch, I really felt like our defense did a really good job of keeping us in a lot of those games as we kind of searched through an identity on offense. And we learned some things through that. And then unfortunately came that 6-game stretch where we lost. And when you go through that, until you're in it together and you understand what, the day by day, every meeting, every practice, every game, and then you throw a bye week in there, it really becomes 7 weeks. That's hard. And that's something that you never want to go through as a player or as any type of coach or anybody at all, fans as well. Nobody wants to go through that. But in life, you get challenged a little bit. And we all get challenged in different ways of how are we going to react. And I think what it taught me as a head coach is that we have a group of guys that we've built over the last couple of years here, and Ryan has built since he's got here. And it's taken time to be able to get through moments like that. And I can just say that's not easy, and that's because of the players. That's a credit to them, because they could have easily went the other way. And what they did is they gave us an opportunity this year to get to the playoffs, which gives you an opportunity to win the Super Bowl. And I think for us, when I look at it from my perspective, when you get to this final game that we played against the Saints, what we need to do now with this opportunity that we're given through George and Ted is use that as more motivation to understand, just like everybody agrees, 8-8 is not good enough. Losing in the playoffs is not good enough. And I think when we all understand that, we know that, our players know it, we all want more, we all want better, then we got to learn from what has happened in that Philadelphia Eagles game in 2018 and what has happened in this Saints game in 2020. And so that's a challenge. And as a competitive person, for me as a head coach and a leader from the player side, that part I'm excited about. And so now that takes us into this upcoming offseason, and which is huge. It's going to be really, really big, that Ryan and I, with the strength that we have working together, and what we've done in the past couple of years together, there's conviction and there's collaboration to dig in and reflect and say why and how. And then we got to be true to our process. And so when we understand where we're at and we get it and we put our head down and we go and we do it for our fans, for our city, for our organization, for our players, for everybody, we need to do everything we can to get this thing right. We're going to exhaust ourselves. And it's a production-based business. So what the only thing we can do, and y'all have heard me say this all year long, is you figure out solutions and you find answers. And so big picture, I'm proud of our players. I'm proud of our coaches. Bigger picture is we need to do better. And what are we going to do and how are we going to do to get to that point? And so it starts right now. And it's an exciting opportunity. Is it going to be a challenge? Yeah. Is it going to be hard? Absolutely. But who doesn't want that? But let's go do it. And so, with that, I'll go ahead and pass it on to questions.
Thanks, Coach. First up today, Jeff Dickerson.
Hey guys, good to see both of you. Hey Ryan, I feel like every year we go back to quarterback. It just seems like that's the topic that everyone always has during these end of year press conferences. Can you just update us? Where do things stand right now at quarterback? And listening to Ted and George, as I know you guys did, they made it sound like, you and Matt are going to have a very, collaborative approach here, working together to help find the quarterback solution, which, maybe wasn't the case a couple of years ago when you drafted Mitch. How is that relationship going to work? And I mean, again, how do you prioritize trying to come up with a solution at quarterback?
Hey, Jeff, good to see you, man. I think, as far as the plan at quarterback and, to get to where we want to go, we definitely need more of that out of that position. We know that. And, what does that entail? That's what this whole offseason is about, as we go into this, Jeff, and we're just, 3 days off a playoff loss, but that's what this offseason is about. And I think when you go into, selecting a quarterback or acquiring a quarterback in any way we do it, or whatever we do with that position, and everything's on the table, Jeff, I go back to exactly what you just said. It's the collaborative relationship that Matt and I have, why do we feel strong about getting that position right? It goes back to that, the connected vision. I feel like when we identify what we're going to do at a position, no different than anything else. It's a collaborative effort, free agency, trade, draft, but I just have a ton of confidence attacking it together. I can't get into specifics for competitive reasons, but I can point to, recent drafts. I think when we've gone in and we've said, hey, as you know, Jeff, it's going to be best player available, but we focus on needs, and you lean towards needs. And we knew, 2 years ago that running back was an important position for us, and we went in there in a third round. We're able to identify a guy like David Montgomery. I think the same holds true to Komet and Jalen Johnson and Mooney this year. I just have a lot of confidence in the unity that we have as a coaching staff and personnel department, but mainly that Matt and I have, and attacking that together.
Pat Finley.
Hey, Ryan, the last time you guys drafted a quarterback, your head coach was in a must-win season and didn't win enough and got fired. How will you balance the short term of this may be a must-win season for you and Matt coming up with making sure you do the right thing for the franchise in terms of trying to acquire that quarterback?
It's every decision I make, Pat, it's the right thing for the franchise. That's just how we operate. That's just natural. And so that's what'll go into it. It's not going to be thinking short term. It's always thinking what's best for the Bears. That's in every move we make. And that's how Matt and I will attack this. And there'll be, a number of ways we can go about it. Again, everything's on the table. We just finished the season, but it's always what's best for the team. And that's long term.
Dan Wiederer.
Hey guys, this one's for both of you. You obviously were both very much immersed in the evaluation of the 2017 quarterback class from different organizations at the time. I'm curious, Ryan, from your vantage point, what missteps you identified from your own process 4 years ago that need to be avoided this time around? And Matt, from your angle in Kansas City, what can you bring from that process with the Chiefs that can be helpful to the Chicago Bears in 2021?
I think, Dan, I'll answer your question first. Good to see you, man. I think, not to get fixated on the past, we're focused on the future, but I think you're right. You always have to learn through every one of these experiences and what we go through, and we can talk about that today. And I think as I reflect back, and you're going to hear this word a lot today because it's true, is collaboration, the collaboration that Matt and I have. And I just have a lot of confidence in doing that together because it's boded well for us in other positions we've selected. So that's what gives me confidence as we enter this offseason.
Yeah, Dan, what I would say, Dan, is, it's when you go through evaluating any position, every team has their own kind of way of how they go about it. Every person, every scout, every coach has their own way of how they go about it. And what I think is neat, and one of the parts that Ryan and I and George and Ted have all talked about is the fact that there is a process. And when I was in Kansas City with Coach Reed and a lot of other coaches that are still there and some that are gone, we had our own process. And so the only thing that I can do is make sure that I share what that was and how we did it. And then we talk through, okay, is that something that we want to do? And do we like it? And where's that at? And along with some of these other coaches as well that are on our staff right now that have been in quarterback evaluation processes, I think that's valuable too. So when you look at the whole product and the collaboration of how you come to a consensus of what you think is the right pick, and then all of a sudden you say, well, whether it's at the quarterback position or for us last year at the tight end position, you figure out how you want to attack it. And for us, that's what we're going to do. And we realize that even all positions, whether it's via the draft or whether it's via free agency or whatever, we're always going to do that. We just talk through the how part. And that's as we grow. I think it's important to understand this is our third year together for Ryan and I. And as we go into our fourth year together, there's things that we learn and we grow in certain areas. And we figure out, okay, where did we go wrong here? And how do we fix that to get better on this upcoming decision? And that's what, I feel is a strength of ours. And that's what we got. That's what we need to do moving forward.
What do you see as the most important part of the quarterback evaluation process? Obviously, you were part of an organization that hit the grand slam 4 years ago.
Yeah, we could sit here for about 2 days on that question, Dan, and we could, maybe someday we can do that. But there's so much that goes into that process, and there's a lot of different things that go into finding the different traits and the skills on and off the field at that position. And again, how you do it, how you go about it. And again, I could just go on and on about that part of it. And there's a lot to it, but that's something that, again, Ryan has experience doing, I have experience doing, and we just need to figure out our best way together.
Thank you.
Yep.
Adam Johns.
Hey guys, sticking with the words process and collaboration, how does that change when evaluating the veteran quarterbacks, specifically with Nick Foles, because the process and the collaboration resulted in Nick Foles. With hindsight and what you learned through this year, what will change? What will you do differently when it comes to looking at veteran quarterbacks?
You want to start first, Ryan, or you want me to go?
I think our process, Adam, is always the same and is always getting refined as we go forward, and I think sometimes it can be a little bit different in what avenue you're acquiring the player. With Foles specifically, as we look at that, and I reflect on him and that move, and he's under contract for us, and I respect the way he handled a lot of adversity this year, not just for himself, for that quarterback room, and he was a leader in the room, even as a starter or as a backup. And I think you go back to when he was playing Adam, and there's some things that in fairness to him, the offensive line was a little unsettled, and the run game wasn't quite maybe where we wanted it to be. And then unfortunately he got injured. So I think there's still some evaluation left out there on him. But again, just coming off 3 days, off a playoff loss, a lot of those things are things we got to discuss. But focusing on Foles, that's what I would say about that.
Yeah, I agree. I think, there's a lot of stuff that goes into that. And I do appreciate the way that Nick handled the entire season. And it wasn't easy. And we learned as we went through that thing, just how we work as coaches, how he works as a player. I know there's all the talk about the connections that we all had together at different times in Nick's career. And he grew a lot from when I had him as a rookie in 2012 to as a backup in Kansas City in 2016 to other coaches on staff that had him in different areas. And, you go back and you say, when we ended up, making the move for him, you look at we weren't able to have that off season, which I do believe would have helped in a lot of different ways for him because things are different. It's just, you can't just connect Kansas City and Philadelphia and say it's the same offense. You can't do that. But there's a growing process there. And so I think that as we look at his situation, just like Ryan said, he went through and battled his tail off in regards to doing a lot of good things for us. And is there areas where he can improve? Absolutely. Are there areas where we can improve as a coaching staff to help him? Yes. And so that's stuff that, like Ryan just said, we're 3 days out. We'll evaluate all that. There'll be some great conversations from us as coaches with these players, which is so valuable to get feedback from. And then you use that to figure out where your weaknesses were as coaches and players to get you better for next year.
Adam Hogue.
Hey, Ryan, I'm going to ask you a similar question I asked Ted earlier, but because he was talking about the culture and how this is a culture that other teams want. I think we're all well aware of how you guys like and feel about the people that are in this organization, but how do you take it from that to a winning football culture?
For sure. I think, when we talk about culture, and I do think there's a lot of teams in this league, guys, that would not come out of it, the 6-game stretch we went through. And I do think that speaks to, you say culture, but I think it speaks to the coaches, and I think it speaks to the young talent on our team. Like, there's a lot of young players that stepped up down that stretch to get us into the playoffs. That's true. And I know one of the questions asked earlier was, You know, are we closer to a 12-4 team or an 8-8 team? You know, there are a lot of things that we went through this year that all teams are going through in an unprecedented year. And I think we learn as we go through those moments and we become stronger. I think there's a development of a lot of young key players on our team that have gotten better, that are foundational pieces for us as we go forward. Do we hit our goals? No, Adam. Like there was inconsistency on offense. We know that, and some second half struggles on defense, and inconsistency at a quarterback position that's critical to our success. But I think it's on us now to take this time, take a deep breath, take out emotion, identify what the problems are, and then use this offseason to fix it. And that's on me. Like, I get it. Like, it's on me to supply better players to our coaching staff to win games. And at the end of the day, that's all that matters.
Deion Miller.
Ryan, will you explore re-signing Mitch, or do you see both sides really benefiting from a break from that? Yeah, that's it pretty much.
Yeah, I would say, Deion, everything's on the table right now. Just as we just come up 3 days off a game, like, everything's on the table. I think, as you know, Deion, the first step is everybody take a deep breath. We got evaluations coming in from all of our coaches and scouts on our own players. We'll get together as a staff. We'll evaluate our own roster. I really want to take our time doing that. I don't care how long it takes. You know, us just being honest and going through every single player and getting every single person's opinion on each player. And then from there, we'll make decisions on what we're going to do. But it starts with getting that part right, and everything's on the table right now.
Brad Biggs.
Yeah, I had a question for each of you guys. Ryan, to start with you, actually I had two for you. The offensive line, do you see some solutions that maybe you guys kind of walked into in the second half of the season in regards to a position group that struggled early in the year and you had some injuries? And then second, with the salary cap for 2021 being potentially what it could be, and knowing that every move would have a future implication, do you still plan to be aggressive?
Yeah, I think when we talk about the offensive line, it's an important position of focus for us. And I think, Brad, your point is accurate. As we went through the season and we talked about solutions, and we kind of get to that midway point and it's the bye week, and Matt and I spent a lot of time on the board just drawing up different combinations of offensive linemen that we could put out there to get a better result. And I thought that was one of the things we were all proud of this year, was establishing that lineup that I think really sparked our run game, better pass protection for a variety of reasons. Guys like Sam Mustipher stepping up, Cody stepping up at left guard, Fetty unselfishly bumping out and playing well at right tackle, and same thing with Alex Bars. So that was something that just kind of, because of necessity, kind of came together. And I think we found out a lot about those players. That's exciting going forward. Losing James Daniels earlier in the year, I think that hurt. And it'll be good to get him back just to have competition with our interior offensive linemen. But Brad, the offensive line is something we're always going to look at, and there's a variety of ways that we can continue to improve it. And it's on us. Every team's going to have these same cap restraints as we head into it. And it's on us to make the right decisions, get creative when we have to, make hard decisions when we have to, and make sure we shore up that position in every way we can. And that's what we'll do.
Will you be aggressive with the cap, knowing that there's future implications?
We got to be conscious. Yeah, there obviously, as you know, every year there's ways to create cap space. And those are all important decisions that we have to make. It kind of starts with that, evaluating our own roster and talking about some of those things. That's real. That'll be out throughout our whole team, though. And then, analyzing what's out there in free agency, but being conscious and being responsible, knowing exactly what you're talking about. And then really understanding the draft and the depth in the draft at certain key positions is important.
Matt, will you have the ability to roll over the contracts of your assistant coaches?
Say that again.
will you have the opportunity to roll over the contracts of your assistant coaches?
That's all stuff that we're going to go through here. I mean, we're literally just out of this thing. So Ryan and I will get together and we'll go through all that.
JJ?
Ryan, Allen Robinson told us a couple days ago that he believed that a deal could have been done between himself and you guys for a contract extension. So why was a deal not done with Allen Robinson? And then the second part of that is, would you consider using the franchise tag on him, knowing he's not a big fan of that, to say the least?
Yeah, JJ, those are all things that we got to work through. When I think about the list of things we need to talk about this offseason, obviously that's a big decision and a big part of it. You know how we feel about Allen, how respected he is in the building. But to get into specifics on his contract, you guys also know I'm not going to get into that. In regards to the franchise tag, I would just say everything's on the table. The league gives us tools for a reason. But right now, we're just going to keep all those talks internal, out of respect to Allen, out of respect to his agent. I just think those are best just handled in a private manner.
Colleen Kane?
Brian, a couple about the defense for you. Just what gives you faith that the defense can return to an elite level? And also just what was your evaluation about why Robert Quinn didn't produce as you expected this season?
Yeah, you look at the defense and we have so much pride in our defense, and we've invested a lot on our defense, Colleen, as you know, and we started off strong in so many areas defensively, and then there was some regression the second half of the season. Those are just the facts, and I think there's a combination of factors why, and that's what we're looking into. I think when we talk about taking a deep breath and then analyzing our team, that's one of the things we really got to look at. We didn't hit expectations on that side of the ball in the second half of the season. It was surprising, and in some ways it was disappointing. And that's something we're definitely going to look at, and we all need to be better. That includes me adding more talent to that side of the ball. I think injuries, Colleen, affected us over there. It started with Eddie Goldman and Roy Robertson Harris, Screen, Jalen Johnson, not having Roquan at the end, as good as he was playing, and just the leader he is, the captain he is in the field. That was significant. And then we had Khalil playing through an injury. So those are all factors with the defense, and that's going to be an important offseason discussion. With Quinn, as we go back, Robert's a player that's had consistent pass rush production throughout his career in our league. And of course, we would have wanted more production this season. I know he's really hard on himself. He feels the same way. I think there's a variety of reasons why maybe that didn't happen. He sets really high standards for himself. We expect him to rebound. I think having an off season, being with us, I think that'll bode well for him. But together with him and with us and our plan, we got to find a way to help him get more production. And I believe that he will. I think, especially in the later part of the season, you felt his presence, you felt his quarterback pressures. That percentage rate went way up, just affecting the quarterback. But at the end of the day, he expects more production, and it's our job to help facilitate that.
Kevin Fishbane?
Question for both of you guys. Matt, I know we talked about play calling a lot, but it seemed to get a little confusing down the stretch. There were some reports coming out. Are you able to clarify just kind of specifically how involved you were in game play calling down the stretch? And then is there a decision yet on the play caller for next year? And then my follow-up to Ryan would be, what role, Ryan, do you have in that decision?
Yeah, so Kevin, so two things. Number one, we'll get into the whole that whole part of it here as we go through, and I meet with every coach, which I'm in the process of doing here, every day here this week. You go through all the strengths and weaknesses of what we want to do and how we can get better. And then as far as the play calling for this year and how things went, again, I've told you about the collaboration, and I can, I'll just. Everything has been the same as it was the last 6 to 7 weeks. Nothing's changed there. So it's been a great collaboration. nothing changed the last couple of weeks or anything like that. I just appreciate the coaches and what they've done, and Bill and what he's done, and the other guys as well. So that's something that what we'll do here in this off season is talk about all that in the process. And y'all know too, like we're in this process right now where there's sometimes moving parts for everybody for good reasons. And so you just got to kind of work through that. We're in that stage right now. So we'll get into all that later here down the road.
Kevin, to answer your question on my part, I think when it comes to play calling and things like that, what I really appreciate is that Matt and I will talk about every subject. So I can be a sounding board for him when he's bouncing off different ideas or thoughts with that. And he can be a sounding board for me when it might come with our personnel department or scouts or other support staff we have. And it's just good to have that to go back and forth. And sometimes I think in the season, I can kind of be maybe a 30,000 foot view for him. And then as we get into the draft, he can do that for me. So I think that's really helpful. What I do respect with Matt is the humility that he operates with. So when we're in season and we're searching for solutions, and we talked about the offensive line change up earlier, and Matt's talking about, anything he's got to do with the play calling. I just think that speaks to who he is. He has humility and doing what's best for our team. And then I know we keep on using the word collaborative, but it's so real, and that applies to our offensive staff too. And I'd go in there and I just see Matt and Laser and Ragone and Flip and just the continuity that those guys have. I think it's strong. I think it gives us a lot of confidence, and I think it's just going to get better going forward, just the way those guys work together. And I think it was evident down the stretch this year.
Mark Potash.
With all due respect, Ryan, what specifically was the misevaluation that led you to choose Trubisky over Mahomes and Watson? And what specifically have you learned from that mistake that will help you get it right this time?
Yeah, I think, again, I get the question, Mark, and, we're focused now. I think what you just said is like, what did you learn as we go forward, and making sure in any acquisition we make that we're doing it the right way. I think, and I would say this, the chapter, we still got a lot of decisions to make. I mean, the season just ended 3 days ago. So we have a lot of things we got to work through with a lot of decisions on our roster, including quarterbacks. So some of those things still got to unfold. But the key word to me is taking this on together with our scouts, and not just with Matt, with the coaches that he has around him. I really feel strong, especially with the quarterback position, when you talk about Matt and Ragone and Flip and Laser, and us just taking on a lot of these tasks together. That's what gives me confidence.
Jason Leisure.
Ryan, you talked about ownership giving you an opportunity this season. After 6 years with a losing record, with some big personnel moves that haven't worked out, how do you defend the work that you've done here and make the case that you deserve that opportunity?
And Jason, I think you do learn and improve through experiences, Jason. I think you've probably felt that in your career, as you go through things. I can confidently say I'm a lot better at this with each year of experience. I can confidently say there aren't a lot of teams that have the relationships that we have in our building to make good decisions together. I know we got a lot of work ahead. I know we got a lot to build on too. There's a lot of good young pieces on here for us to build on top of. And I'm just excited to take these things on together. I think we talk about, how have you learned? How have you improved? I think we're all doing that. And, one thing this league teaches you, and Matt and I were just talking about this the other day, you're either humbled or you're about to be humbled. We've made mistakes. Yes. Are we learning and evolving? Yes. Are there some things that I would do different if I could go back on a variety of decisions? And sometimes they're not just all roster decisions. Yes. But I think that I had the humility to learn from those things and be better from those things, and then take them on together with a unified staff. So that's what gives me confidence.
Hub Arkush.
Morning, guys. This is for both of you. For whatever reason, there's some confusion about how much time remains on your contracts. And, I don't want to get into your personal business, but it's pretty well established in this business that managers might have acted or worked differently depending on whether they're in the final year of deals, how much time they have left to go. So I wonder, and it makes it really hard for us to report accurately and fairly without understanding what might be causing some of these decisions. So I'm wondering if you'd mind sharing with us how much time you do have left on your contracts.
Hub, I respect the question, and I totally get why you're asking it, but it's no different than player contracts. And for us, honestly, the entire focus, and you got to believe me when I say this, the whole focus is on getting this team right and doing what's best for it. It's not about our contracts. It's about what's best for the team. And if you just keep it that simple, talking about contracts, to me, that's a selfish way to look at things. To me, it's what's best for our football team. And that's all that matters.
Well, Ryan, with all due respect, we do know the terms of the players' contracts. I'm just asking when they expire. I don't care what you make or anything like that.
Yeah, and to me, Hub, that's just a non-factor in anything we're doing. I understand why you're asking it, but to me, it's just all about what's best for the team, and without getting into contract durations or any specifics.
Mark Grody.
Hi guys, Ryan. I respect your answer earlier on wanting to keep the, what they have talked about, what you guys have talked about with Allen Robinson in-house as far as the contract is concerned. But did you speak with Allen Robinson at all this year? Because he did express frustration through social media and then with us the other day as well. Did you talk to him during the season to tell him, hey, we're gonna get to this?
Yeah, we did talk, and Mark, it's always a balance with players in season with their contracts. You're always trying to strike a balance. You never want that to be a distraction. Ultimately, I care about Allen and his focus. So Allen and I have talked about that. Allen and I have a good relationship. He's a highly intelligent football player, and then of course Joey Lane has had regular dialogue with his agents, especially at that point in time. But I think those things, it's a two-way street. And those are just things we got to work through, and without getting into the details and specifics. But to answer your question, yes, I did talk to Allen about it, and we have had a lot of discussions about that.
We're going to take just a couple more for Ryan and Matt. Pat Finley.
I have a defensive question for each of you. Matt, what are you looking for in a new defensive coordinator? And do you have anybody on staff that might make sense? And also, do you think it's a more popular or as attractive of a job as it was 2 years ago? And then for Ryan, you mentioned that Khalil was hurt. Is he going to need surgery, and is anybody else going to?
So I'll start off first, Pat. And so I really want to start off by just saying, number one, thank you to Coach Pagano. I mean, when you sit back and you realize what this man has been through and what he's done for this league and what he's done for so many coaches in this league, including myself, and what we've learned from him, not just as a coach, but as a person, this guy's been through it all. And I'd be remiss if I didn't just thank him from all of us, what he's given to us the past 2 years. I did not know Chuck at all from the past 2 years, or prior to these last 2 years, and what he's brought to us and what he's taught us, everybody in our family here, is second to none. And so for him to come to me yesterday morning and break the news to me and just say it's time to call it a career and he's going to walk away, and he's sacrificed, his family sacrificed so much for him, and now it's time for him to sacrifice for them. He's at total peace with it. And so I just think that, again, thank you, Coach, for that. And he's going to be a great granddad and enjoy that family time. And then as far as, the next defensive coordinator and working towards that, as you all know, that process for me and for us in this building is something that we obviously take very seriously, and it's going to be very thorough. in my short career as a head coach, I've learned a lot of different things as I grow. And, one of them is you're put in this role to make decisions with the hires and the fires. And so right now in this time with Chuck leaving and retiring, this is going to be a very important hire. And, we have a lot of great guys internally on staff, and obviously there'll be people outside as well. So that's a big process. I look forward to it. I think that we'll get on that here ASAP.
I'll follow up, Pat, with your question. I think, first of all, with Chuck, I just want to kind of echo what Matt said. Beyond football, and you guys know Chuck, just the person he is, the man that he is. I personally just learned so much from him, and that's past football. That's just the human being that he is, and the things that he's been through and the experiences that he's had. I think we're all better from being around Chuck Pagano the last 2 years, and just appreciate him immensely. Going through any of the injuries, we're still doing a lot of the exit physicals as we kind of hit the midway point of this week. I think with Khalil, I would say back to the injuries right now, I don't anticipate any major surgeries as we go through it, but we're still gaining some of that. But I don't anticipate anything significant. I don't think that's the case with Khalil. His shoulder, as he was on the injury report, that was real. And I think we appreciate the way that he fought through that. He played through that injury, and that was real. The only other injury update I think I can give for you guys would be Tariq, as he's recovering from the knee surgery, and obviously a player we missed. Huge part of our offense, a huge part of our special teams. We'll be excited to get him back. He's been working really hard. Just to have him in our building rehabbing, just to have his energy around our team, I think is important and infectious. And we're hopeful to have him ready for a training camp. That'd be Tariq.
We're going to do one more. Deion Miller.
Ryan, with instability at quarterback, back-to-back 8-8 regular seasons, how close or far do you feel like this team is from climbing out of that NFL mediocrity where they sit right now? And how should Bears fans feel about the state of the team after what they've heard this morning?
Yeah, I think, we talk about the quarterback position and how critical that is to any team's success. And we understand that. And that's why, it'll be a big focus of us and a big decision for us. And, you talk about, 8-8 not being good enough and losing in the first round of the playoffs not good. So how do we bridge that gap, to some of those other teams and where we aspire to be? And to me, I look at it as continuing to add young talent to our team. Again, we feel like we have a young core, but we need to add more to that. We need to provide our coaches with better weapons on both sides of the ball. Fortunately, in this draft, we're projected, we expect to have approximately 8 draft picks. We have our first round pick, our second round pick, our third round pick. So we do have ammunition in the draft, and we have some creative things that we can do this offseason as well, even with possibly a lower cap number. I think about our Bears fans, and I think about it all the time. And this is my 6th season in Chicago. I went to college in this state. My wife is from this state. My in-laws are all from this state. They're all passionate Bears fans. I know the passion and pride that all of our fans have. And to be honest, it's a tremendous driving factor when you talk about being obsessed to do whatever you can to give them something to be grateful for. And I know what this team means to this entire region. I know what our success means to this entire region. And look, Deion, this year has been hard on everyone. And I know that. And beyond the sport of football, I know that we can provide that escape and some happiness to our fans. So I get the frustration. Trust me, I understand. I get it. 8-8, it's not good enough. And I accept that. We have greater expectations for ourselves and for the team. And all I can say is that we'll put our heads down. We'll work. We'll do everything we can in our power to elevate this team, to get it into a position that it needs to be in. It's something that our fans can be proud of. That's a promise.
Yeah, Deion, I just want to jump in real quick and second that in regards to what he just said. I think that's real. And just for all of us to realize, I mean, we wouldn't want it any other way in regards to the extreme passion that our fans and our city has. I mean, there's that's a beautiful thing. And, you know, that's not something that we take lightly or that we just put by the wayside, or we care about all that and we understand that. And that's what motivates you is, and for our players too, you know, we, just like George said, in regards to the fans not being there, you know, we live by that. We love that. And we take this challenge head on. And just like Ryan said, we're going to put our head down and we're going to do everything we can to get everybody to be happy, which is by winning and doing it together, which is the only way and the only thing that we know. So that part's exciting, and we're really looking forward to it. And, we appreciate all you guys, throughout this entire season. And Ryan and I are looking forward to doing that here as we move forward.
Welcome, everyone, to another edition of the Sports Medicine Update, a weekly podcast by yours truly, Jerry Riles, and, of course, the Honorable Dr. Chad Patrolman. Doc, this is our second season, first episode, 2021. It's great to see you. Happy New Year. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Time has flown because we're having fun.
It certainly has flown, and we certainly are having fun, and we hope that many people had an opportunity to see any of the podcasts in the 2020 year. What an incredible year it definitely was, but hopefully we were able to enlighten them, give them a little bit of education and knowledge, and help them out along their ways. The most important thing is the fact that hopefully none of the viewers or listeners sustained any type of injuries, and if they did, not serious injuries, but definitely, hopefully they were able to take something away from the podcast over the 2020 season and apply it to their personal needs and cares. And hopefully everyone is back to 100% and ready to rock and roll in 2021, because I certainly am, Doc.
Yeah, likewise, Jerry.
Sounds good. Well, you know, it's a big weekend, and we're here. I can't believe that we made it, talking about making it, the National Football League. First weekend of playoff football. It's a super wild card weekend. 3 games on Saturday, 3 games on Sunday. The Bears made it. There's a lot going on as far as the National Football League is concerned. I was skeptical. I was one of those individuals out there that did not think that we would make it to the playoffs, let alone halfway through the regular season. But due to the pandemic and due to the protocols and everything that was put in place around the league, we've made it, Doc, and it looks like we're going to have a Super Bowl one way or the other. But first and foremost, reflect on this past season, 17 weeks of football in the National Football League and making it to the playoffs. Your thoughts on making it this far?
Well, Jerry, you were a little skeptical. I was optimistic. I told you we'd make it, and we did. And I'll tell you that the pandemic is horrible. It's tragic. Thousands have died. However, the problem is made substantially worse by pessimism. This is a beatable thing. We're beating it. I think the most important thing is not to compound the problems of the virus with problems of unnecessary lockdown. I think what's happened in sports is exactly what should have happened. People power through. When problems come up, they deal with them in an appropriate fashion, and it has succeeded until now, and it will continue to succeed.
Well, you know, let's hope that we get a grasp on it and we can continue to make some progress and get back to some sort of normalcy. I know it's going to take some time as far as the vaccines are concerned, and it's projected that, you know, by spring and the summer, we should be in halfway decent condition. And I say that in a selfish way, and I think I speak for a lot of sports fans out there. We just want to get out to the games. It's great, and I thank the players, the coaches, the front offices, the owners, that we've been able to watch some sports on the weekend. But I think a lot of fans, especially in the state of Illinois, we want to get out to the venues, whether it's the United Center to watch the Bulls and the Blackhawks. Of course, we would love to have been at Soldier Field to watch the Bears, but the Cubs at Wrigley and the Sox at Guaranteed Rate Field, fans just want to get back out there and cheer their teams on, and hopefully we'll get to that point. But as far as football is concerned, and we talked about the playoffs, the Bears, of course, advanced to the playoffs, finishing the regular season with an 8-8 record, but they back into the playoffs, and they have a few players who are banged up, and we'll get an opportunity to talk about that. But there are other teams around the league that have some players that are banged up, and more notably was Jared Goff with the LA Rams, who sustained a thumb injury, and it was questionable if they were going to advance to the playoffs in that last week of the regular season, week 17. But people have had their eyes on the injury to his thumb, and it's been up in the air as far as his availability is concerned. But at this point, as far as this recording of the podcast, it seems as if he will be ready to go and move forward in postseason play. What's your thoughts, and what do you know about Jared Goff and his injured thumb?
Well, it's a very interesting situation, and one of the relatively uncommon examples where a quantum leap has been performed in an area of sports medicine. So I don't know, I can't tell you for sure what he did, but what I think he did was tore the ulnar collateral ligament of his thumb. That's the common injury, sports injury. He had surgery by a Dr. Stephen Shin, S-H-I-N, who's a brilliant doctor, part of the Cedars-Sinai, I think Curlin Job Sports Medicine Institute. So here's the story on this. The ulnar collateral ligament tear is the ligament, is a tear of the ligament that runs along the inside of the thumb, and you need it to grip things. And you can tear it. Skiers can tear it on a ski pole. Throwers can tear it. Other people can tear it. Now, most ligaments, when they tear, they heal on their own. In the knee, for example, the medial collateral ligament usually heals on its own. Most ligaments do, but there are some that don't. The anterior cruciate ligament is one, but they're unusual. Well, the ulnar collateral ligament of the thumb is one. It's a little controversial, but it often, some would say always, but it often needs surgery. But here's the thing. In general, when we repair ligaments, we repair the ligament, we protect the joint with a cast or a splint or decreased activity for a period of months. And even after surgery, it's 3 to 6 months maybe before people, or longer, before people get back. So that had been the case with the ulnar collateral ligament of the thumb until Dr. Shin, and that had been the case until, and I can't tell you when it was, but it was, I would say, within the last 5 years. I sort of became conscious of it, I think, when Drew Brees injured his thumb. But anyway, within 5 years ago, Dr. Shin got the idea to provide what he called an internal brace on the thumb. And so what that means is he would reattach the ligament to where it had torn. But in addition to that, he took a structure, an artificial structure, a piece of tape often usually, and would attach it as well. So basically, that inanimate structure would run along the same course as the ligament and reinforce it. So when you repair a ligament, it's a complex process. The ligament has to remodel. Often the cells die and come back to life, but it takes months for it to gain strength. However, putting a piece of tape, that's how it was written that he used to do it, I'm not sure exactly how he does it now, is something that provides immediate strength. And it can be attached to the bone with a pin or a screw. So replacing a ligament with an inanimate structure is not something that has been successful over the long term. People have tried it with ACLs, for example, and they break down. But if you put it in for short-term protection while the ligament is healing, it has the potential to provide much more immediate return of function. And that's what has happened in that case. So Dr. Shin popularized it. I don't do hand surgery. I don't know how many other people are doing it now, but it's a radical breakthrough because, it's interesting. If you follow Jared Goff, so he got hurt and he tried to, I think he did play with it a little more in that game. And then after the game, or maybe at the end of the game, they said, he can't go. So, so you wonder, well, gee, will he try to play again? Will they try to have him limp through the playoffs? But they didn't. They, wisely, he had surgery pretty immediately. And that's clearly because they were planning surgery to do it more or less as soon as possible to get him back. And that's what seems to be happening. Now, I don't know. I was reading where Dr. Shin wrote, at least at one point, he said that the usual 10 to 12 week rehab can be cut in half. So that'd be 5 to 6 weeks. Well, this hasn't been 5 to 6 weeks with Jared Goff. It's just a couple. But I don't know. When they've asked him, at least from what I've read, whether he's going to play, they've been kind of vague. So, you had said you thought he was coming back. And, I think he might. I'm not sure. There's certainly you make an incision, certain things have to heal to throw a football. But the fact that it's even in the conversation for someone to suffer, what has been a season-ending injury and then get back for the playoffs potentially, hopefully this week for them, or if, not this weekend they win following week, I think it's pretty amazing. It has really revolutionized the care of that injury.
Well, it's very interesting when you talk about injuries, especially in the National Football League, because you could go anywhere from doubtful to questionable to probable. And part of that is due to the fact that you don't want to give information to your opponents in preparation for the upcoming game. So as far as the media is concerned and the fans are concerned, it's all speculation. And so you're not sure if it's really you're not sure if it's really accurate, or if you're not sure if it's, being overprotective, or what the case may be. But there have been rumblings that he may be available for the playoffs. So as of this broadcast, of this podcast, it still remains to be seen. But again, if he is available to play, based on the information that you provided us, how effective do you think he could be with that injury? Because one, that opponents will be targeting that hand to see if they can some way re-injure it to get him out of it. And is it a concern long term for Jared Goff, not only professionally playing the sport, but to live with this sort of injury?
Yeah, I think long term people have seemed to do well. So I would expect him to do well. Short term, if he can play, how well will he play? Well, there's kind of three parameters. The one is the ligament. The ligament will be of no structural use, but that doesn't really matter. We know that. Then there's the tape. The tape should be as strong as it's going to get immediately at the end of surgery. So where the ligament needs healing time, the tape doesn't. In fact, it's the reverse timeline. The ligament gets stronger with post-operative convalescence. The tape, if anything, would tend to get weaker. Because the more mechanical stress you put on an inanimate structure, eventually it loosens. Now, in an ideal world, the ligament heals, and I think this is what usually happens. The ligament heals, stabilize the joint, so the tape never does loosen because the stresses that are on it initially dissipate once the ligament heals. So I think the joint structurally is probably fine. But then you're left with, how about the other aspects of the area? So you have to make an incision, decent sized incision, I think, in that area. So then you close the incision and you put in sutures, or there's different kinds of glue or other ways you can close it. And then you've got the tissue below the skin and above the ligament, the muscle and such. So, those structures below the skin get inflamed. Now, muscles aren't cut, so they should be functional. Obviously, they get inflamed just from being surgically manipulated. And then, you worry about the skin, because gripping a football and throwing it puts a lot of friction on the skin. I don't exactly know. You can cover it with, like I said, there's glue-like substances. You can wear a glove. So, coming back this quickly, I think would be an amazing testament to both Dr. Shin and to Jared Goff. And if they don't, there's no, it wouldn't be surprising. There's no shame in that. It isn't as though he should be back, and what if he isn't? He's had a delay. It would be amazing if he came back. But I don't see any inherent reason why. The joint should be stable. I don't see any inherent reason why he couldn't, unless, it's possible that every throw he just rips the skin open, I guess. And I don't know about that. But and I don't know if he'll play. But it's possible. seen in multiple sports. Thumb injuries are reasonably common, and this, I don't know if it's the most common thumb injury, but it may well be, because that ligament is kind of the weak link. The thumb kind of sticks out from the side of the hand, and I don't know what he had. Jay Cutler, you may recall, that it's, what a shame, that season when they got off to that great start, and he threw a pick, and he tackled or tried to tackle the person who ran it back, and tore up his thumb, and he couldn't come back. And I think it was Caleb Haney, I can't remember, was the backup, and they couldn't win a game, and they just missed the playoffs. What a shame. And and Rajon Rondo, similar thing. The Bulls were killing it in the postseason. Remember, was it up 2-0 on the Celtics? I can't remember when he was there with D Wade and Jimmy Butler, and he hurt his thumb, and they lost. And again, I'm not sure if it was the same thumb injury, but it's a pretty common one. So, they're out there in high profile situations.
Yeah. And that's why I was asking if this is something that's new or common, because you brought it up regarding Tommy John. And I can remember if we discussed this in our previous podcast over the past year, Tommy John surgery. You didn't hear much about that when we were kids growing up, but over time, it became almost like a norm as far as pitchers rehabilitating and taking care of themselves. So I was wondering if, with the procedure and the practice that took place with Dr. Shin, is this something that is going to become more common, I guess, to not only professional athletes as far as the surgery is concerned, but maybe to the layperson as well, who may be that.
Oh, I think so. Warrior. Yeah, and again, I don't really see hand trauma patients, so I'm not. Orthopedics is very specialized, right? I do knee and shoulder surgery, and so and there's people that do foot and ankle and hand and one thing and another. But no, I think it is, and my understanding is, at least from what I had read, so there are things, there's risks and benefits. So this has a definite benefit for anybody. You don't have to be a football player. You could be a tradesperson, anybody, where you'd like to get your hand back sooner. So the question is, do you lose anything? Is there any downside? And at least, from what I had read, I don't think there is. I don't think there isn't, for example, an increased infection rate, or sometimes when you put artificial substances in, you have to take them out more often. So I don't think there's any downside. And there's a clear upside, no matter who you are, in cutting the rehab time, as Dr. Shin had originally written, from 12 weeks to 6 weeks, and who knows, maybe it's even 2 or 3 weeks by now. Right. So there's a clear upside. The one thing that occurs in cases like this is you have to know how to do it. There are what we call learning curves, right? And so I don't know how hard the procedure is to do. I don't know how hard it is to learn. So I don't really know to what extent. What tends to happen in cases like this is that it starts out as something sort of exotic that just a few people do. And then with time, kind of everybody does it. So I know he's not the only one, or at least I think he's not the only one doing it anymore. But whether, it's 5% or 50% or 90% of the hand surgeons do this now, I'm not sure. But I think it is part of the mainstream already.
Yeah. Okay. No, that's good to know. And it's good to know that there's something that an athlete, again, whether they're professional or amateur athletes, if they sustain an injury such as this, that there's something that they can do about it, and hopefully a quick recovery as opposed to a long, drawn-out process. I want to get, we're talking about the playoffs with Dr. Chad Padomas, season 2 of the Sports Medicine Weekly Update. As of this podcast, we're heading into the NFL playoff super wild card weekend, and the Bears, of course, advanced to the playoffs, as we stated in the opening of this podcast, and they'll be taking on the New Orleans Saints on Sunday afternoon. But they have a few players who are down, and again, as far as teams are concerned, they don't want to show their hand to their opposition, so players are listed either from anywhere from probable to questionable to doubtful. And one player who has been out for a couple of weeks, at least as far as the regular season is concerned, is a rookie cornerback for the Chicago Bears, Jalen Johnson, and we've discussed him in the past, and I think you and I both love what he brings to the the defensive side of the football. But we were somewhat skeptical, and the red flag came up when he was drafted, and it was revealed that he had 3 surgeries, shoulder surgeries on both shoulders in 4 years. And unfortunately, he's injured his shoulder again, and he's out, and he's one of the players who is questionable for this playoff game. Can you elaborate and get us up to speed as far as the injuries? And is this something that may be lingering throughout his professional career playing in the National Football League?
Yeah, and again, they have not said, as best I can tell, exactly what it is. And, why should they, as you say? I do believe, so again, we talked about this at some length, as you mentioned several weeks ago, and the terminology is confusing. So it was, I can't remember now if it was Anthony Miller or not, but there was someone on the Bears who was listed as having a labrum tear and had surgery, but had clearly had dislocations. So here's the thing. Jalen Johnson had dislocated shoulders, and he had 3 operations on the 2 shoulders. And what we had talked about before is that this surgery, of all the relatively common sports medicine operations, and it's relatively common, it has probably the highest failure rate. And there are great surgeons doing great work. It's just, it's just the state of the art. The operation just fails more often than others. And do most of them fail? No, but it's pretty significant. So, we had seen examples of it on the Bears and elsewhere, and where, you have it done and then you have to have it done again. So we worried. So he definitely, or at least I think definitely from what I read, had dislocated shoulders to begin with. So the question is, did he have a recurrent dislocation now, and they're waiting for it to quiet down, or something else? There are other things that you can have, falling on the shoulder and getting an AC sprain of it. So I don't know. One would suspect it might be a recurrent dislocation. And then if it is, the question comes up, what do you do with that? So if it has recurred, it'll definitely need surgery. But is it urgent surgery? It won't be a Jared Goff thumb situation. If you fix it, you're down for 6 months, maybe longer, 4 months, but months for sure. So, it isn't like as soon as it happened that let's hurry up and fixing it back for the playoffs. That's not going to happen. So, I don't know if it is a recurrently dislocating shoulder, and he hasn't had surgery yet because there's really not much reason to wait. One wonders if they were waiting to see if he could play. And you can play, and Anthony Miller did, the first year, his shoulder dislocated. It doesn't always come out, and he would, I don't remember the exact game, but they didn't treat it surgically initially, and then he tried to finish out the season, and it popped out once or twice, and the shoulder would hurt, but it doesn't, we don't think, do long lasting damage. So if it is a recurrent dislocation, and he hasn't had surgery for it, it might mean that they might want to get him back out there and see what happens. What happens is, if it is that, the shoulder is stable if your arm is at your side. And I mentioned a few weeks ago, we treat linemen sometimes with a brace around their waist and a chain that goes to another brace around the arms to kind of hold it down. So, if you don't extend your arm, maybe you're okay. Now, does a defensive back need to extend their arm? Well, yeah, because you're defending passes and things like that. So they may decide that Jalen Johnson, on 1.5 arms, is better than the backups Kindle Viter. I don't know if that's not his name, but the rookie quarterback. Because I think there's been some thoughts that they've had some issues there, or Buster Screen. So, maybe they were waiting to see how things happened, and if they thought they needed them, they try to get them back and tell them to try to protect that arm, reach with the other arm, and if it goes out, then take them out. Or it could be something entirely different. I don't know that it's a recurrent dislocation. If you fall on it, you can get, it's called an AC separation or sprain, and it hurts a lot, but the pain goes down, and structurally you can usually play. There's another problem called a labrum tear in the shoulder, and it could be that. So I don't want to get too much into the weeds here, but I'd mentioned that I think it was Anthony Miller, one of the Bears, they said he had a labrum tear, which was probably true, but the labrum tear was accompanied by a dislocation. And the labrum is a circumferential structure that lines the socket of the shoulder, and you can think of it as being torn like the face of a clock. So for a right shoulder, a labrum tear with a dislocation tears between 4 o'clock and 6 o'clock. So, but the main issue is the dislocation. Now, if you tear the labrum between 11 o'clock and 1 o'clock, that is in the superior part, it has an acronym called a slap lesion. So those, and they're complicated, but many of them need surgery, but a lot of them don't. And with that, if he has that, it isn't something where he'd have to restrict his motion. He could reach and do what he wanted. It'd just be a question of, if it hurt too much. So again, it's just, it's just speculation what it is, and they're smart, right? And not saying what it is. And I guess we'll figure it out, after the season, see if he goes, if he doesn't go, and if he has surgery afterwards. And at some point, they'll probably say what it is. But, they're all things that are traumatic. So they all occur reasonably commonly in young athletes. So I don't know. Hopefully he's better. Hopefully he goes out and helps them win.
Yeah, hopefully he is better. I got to ask you before we say goodbye, and thank you again, Dr. Chapp, for joining us. You called it what type of lesion? Slab lesion?
Yeah, it's an acronym. It's developed by, it stands for
right
super.
Here?
It's at the top of the shoulder, so right up here. You usually feel it in the back.
Right.
It stands for, but except it's deep inside, you can't. It isn't tender to the touch. It stands for superior labrum, anterior and posterior. Right. It was coined by the guy who discovered it, who's a fantastic surgeon named Stephen Snyder. The shout out to Southern California, SCOE, Southern California Orthopedic Institute. He has a knack for acronyms. There's another one. It's a rotator cuff tear that he called a pasta tear, and I won't tell you what it stands for. It's but anyway, it's slap lesion, and it's fairly common, so it could be that.
So it's interesting I ask you that because I have an issue, and the doctor called it a slap tear.
Oh, really?
SLAP, correct?
AP? I'm sorry.
SLAP.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he said, because I had issues with my shoulder.
Yeah.
And I had the MRI and everything done, and that's what he diagnosed it as. And
Jared, let me ask you, when you had the MRI, did they inject dye into your shoulder or just take a conventional MRI?
No, I believe they injected the dye in there as well to take a look.
Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, it's fine. And that's what they were diagnosed, and I hadn't heard it before. And he told me, you can live with it and it's fine, but we can also repair it. And the reason I was reluctant to do any surgery or anything on it, not for the fact of the surgery, because that appeared to be a simple procedure. It's the fact that the downtime that you talked about would lay you up in a sling or whatever for more or less 6 months or so to recover. And I just simply couldn't afford to take that amount of time.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, since you bring it up, so this is something an area I do a lot of work in. In fact, I was asked to edit a journal about it, wrote our clinical series about it, and we do them, and have had very good success. It's actually fairly controversial. So I'll tell you, actually, I just saw someone today with it. They don't all need surgery. We do PRP, platelet-rich plasma injections, for them as a first. We do physical therapy and PRP. And so first of all, it isn't just a superior labrum tear. The ones that need surgery, it has to be the superior labrum. You need an MRI arthrogram to diagnose it, and it needs to go through something called the biceps anchor. So, a long discussion a couple hours ago with a patient about this. So most slap lesions do not fit those criteria. Most of them don't need surgery. But even the ones that do fit the criteria, in my world, it needs to be through this biceps anchor, proper criteria, and an MRI arthrogram. You need a traumatic event. This is not an overuse problem. And you need pain sort of in the back of the shoulder. And then you need to fail physical therapy and fail a PRP injection. If you do all of those things, I operate on them. So I don't really do very many. And it's interesting, Dr. Snyder has written about this and said at meetings, he said, guys, don't be so quick to operate on these. Because most of them, the things that superficially seem to be that aren't. But the other side of it is, the surgery has kind of a bad reputation because there are a lot of complications. So much so that the standard, you mentioned it's a simple thing. Well, the standard thing to do is to put in an anchor and then tack it down. And that's what I do. And that is fairly simple. But it has a reputation of having a high complication rate with stiffness. So much so that it is kind of standard, depends on your algorithm, for people over 40 to not try to fix it at all, but to cut the biceps tendon and tack it down to take stress off it. That's something I don't do. You know, I fix them when they need fixing, and if you're careful who you do it on, I think results can be good. But it's a controversial area for sure, both because it's difficult to diagnose and because the treatment, you see, it's something that's sort of loose that you're tightening or detached that you're tightening. And it can be difficult to tell if it really needs it. And if you tighten one that didn't need it to begin with, you can over tighten it. So you can really cause stiffness. So it's tricky, bottom line. But physical therapy and PRP take care of a lot of them in my experience.
Wow. Well, thank you so very much, Doc. And over time, I just live with it, and it's gotten some improvement. I do exercises, get a rub down every now and then, and it's certainly not as bad as it was a few years ago. So I've been able to deal with it and handle it and live a normal life. Hey, Doc, it's a pleasure. It's an opportunity, and great to talk with you in this 2021 year, and looking forward to some more exciting information, and hopefully we can help some folks out along the way, whether they're the weekend warriors or certainly want to get back out there on the golf course. But if people are out there rollerblading, tennis playing, or whatever the case may be, hiking, we want them to be safe and sound. But if they can always use some help or some guidance or some recovery processes, how do they get a hold of you, Dr. Chapadromas?
I just called our number. It's 847-699-6810. We've got a great staff and happy to help any way we can.
Sounds good, and you do a fantastic job. I can say that personally for sure. Doc, it's a pleasure. Enjoy the weekend. Enjoy the NFL games, and go Ohio State Buckeyes taking on the Alabama Crimson Tide in the national championship, my good friend.
Yeah, it should be a great game. Thank you, Jerry. You too. You will.
Dr. Chapadromas, Sports Medicine Weekly Update, the podcast. Yours truly, Jerry Riles. Talk with you all next week. Take care, everybody.